All right, everyone, I want to thank you for coming to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the people that bring them to you. So let's go ahead and start off right off the bat and talk to each of you. Let us know who you are and a little bit about yourself. Start with you, JD.
Oh, hi. Okay. I'm J.D.Blackrose. I write a variety of things, but right now what I'm talking about is my new novella, Hide and Chic. It looks like this. Ooh, fancy. It is the second novella in my Zombie Cosmetologist series. And yes, you heard those words right. Zombie and cosmetologist go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's obvious. And so my character, Waylon Jenkins, is a zombie, and he's also a cosmetologist and makeup artist to the stars in Hollywood. And he gets sucked into a murder mystery in the first wand plucking cover because bodies start showing up with limbs missing, and the local police captain thinks the local zombie has to be the perpetrator because who else needs the spare parts? And the adventure continues in Hide and Chic. So this new one just came out, and it's murder and mascara, and you're going to have to read it.
All right, thank you. Jason.
My name is Jason Gilbert. I write urban fantasy, alternate history, and horror sometimes because it's funny. I write the Coldstone files through Falstaff Books. Wolf Song is coming out at the end of the month. First book is Wolfbane, and I'm fairly certain that they still have it on sale for 99 cents, so you need to get that. It is about the son of the Wolfman, and this season he's investigating a human trafficking ring. He can shift wherever he wants, and his best friend tends to beat him with a rolled newspaper when he's been a bad dog.
All right, John.
I'm John Hartness. I'm the co-founder and publisher of Falstaff Books, so I am at least at some level responsible for all of this nonsense that everybody's talking about. And Jason's book is no longer on sale for 99 cents.
Okay, I didn't.
You only got 2 months worth of pandemic quarantine sale.
Oh, okay. You still have to get it though, because it's a good book, and I like
it. It is a good book. I also, in addition to publishing other people's work, write a few things, including the Quincy Harker Demon Hunter series, the Black Knight Chronicles, and the Bubba the Monster Hunter series of short stories and novellas. So my newest release is a Bubba novella, and it is the second novella in season 5 of Bubba the Monster Hunter, and it is called Swamp Music. Bubba goes back to visit Florida, where his good friend, Uncle Father Joe, the now defrocked Catholic priest, he's now a defrocked Catholic priest, so he's hanging out with his girlfriend in Florida. So Bubba goes down to answer Uncle Father Joe's call for help and finds out far more about his friend's girlfriend than he ever wanted to know, and learns more about cloacas than he ever wanted to know. So get out there and pick that up, and maybe you too can learn about cloacas. It's an educational horror comedy.
All right. And then Allie.
Hi, I'm Alledria, and this is my first piece from Falstaff called A Doll's Life. And it's with the Broken Cities novellas, which isn't that the one with the labyrinth inside of the corpse of a goddess?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was right.
It's a series of very loosely connected weird fiction and literary science fiction and fantasy novellas.
Yeah. In this particular instance, my character Alicia falls into a realm in which she finds out that everybody's been turned into a living doll. And of course, your first response to that would be, okay, it's time to get out. Just go. GTFO. Unfortunately, she's got a small problem in the fact that her brother's dead and she needs to figure out how to bring him back. So she ends up having to figure out, okay, how do I bring my brother back and get myself out of here without falling afoul of the master of the realm.
All right.
Pick it up and find out what happens.
And finally, Leann.
Hi, I'm Leann Rettell. I am a doctor by day and writer when I get time in between all the other things I do in life. I write the urban fantasy series, the Contragic series, and for Falstaff, I write the Hands of Time series. The first book is The Dream Thief, but I'm here tonight to promote the second book in that series, The Dream Awakened. It follows Malcolm Jones. He's one of 12 immortal beings who have been around since the dawn of time, and they still dark, dangerous dreams that, if allowed to prosper, would lead to horrible consequences for humanity. So in the first book, he misses part of a dream that, if he doesn't fix, will lead to humanity slowly dying out over the next 30 to 50 years. And in the second book now, people are murdering their old targets, and he has to figure out who is behind it, if it's one of his own, and stop them before the world finds out the dream thieves exist.
All right, thank you. Now, let's go ahead and talk about your journey to becoming a published author. We'll start with you, Jason. You're muted.
Now that I'm unmuted,
Okay.
You
so
sounded so much better before.
it did. Yeah, I'm not going to deny. I mean, when you have
That
a
was
voice like
great.
mine and people get on the phone and think you're Fran Drescher, I mean, but my first book was self-pubbed, called Bad Movie Beware, and all it was a collection of movie reviews, because I also review movies under the name Fail Flicks. And then I got the notion that I wanted to write a novel series and wrote The Clockworks of War, also self-pubbed, and loved the series. It's done. It's 3 books, and everybody who helped me with it was great. I will never self-pub again. And so got this crazy idea, because vampires are great. I don't know when we started sleeping with them and stopped being scared of them, but hey, but I've always been a werewolf guy. And so one day I was standing at the Muggles market, and John was packing up. Well, John was watching Melissa, Teresa, and I pack up the Falstaff room. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, John, the son of the Wolfman's investigating a human trafficking ring." He goes, "How much of it's done?" "The first book and half the second one." "Okay, send me a letter." And initially I was going to tie it into Quincy Harker. He came back and said it would be better standalone, which, I mean, that's fine. And after a few rewrites, I ended up with book 1 of the Coldstone files. And usually I've been kind of a 3-book and I'm done kind of dude, but with this, I feel like it can go on for a while. So I think I've finally fallen into my thing. For a while, I was going for the whole New York pub thing and whatnot. And honestly, just based on what I've seen from friends of mine who are in the industry, I'm happier under a small press. I really am. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at this point. I'm plotting out the new novels. I've got in the back of my mind a possible new series yet, but I'd rather right now stick with Coldstone Files and stay focused on that. I'm having a big time with it. So that's kind of my the brief version of my path to publication.
Great. Now that seems to be one of the unique comments about how John helped you get into publication, because normally there's a bar involved. So this was...
There was a bar later.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, branding, I usually am somewhere in proximity of a bar. So that kind of helped, that I didn't necessarily need to run into John with a bar, because there would definitely be a bar shortly after.
Okay.
I have bought a lot of authors at bars.
Mm-hmm.
And so, John, how about your path?
Oh God.
So we're going to be here a while.
Yes, I'm going to look at my watch, set timer now, and go.
Maybe abbreviated.
Maybe like 1 a.m. we'll finally get done, and it'll be Leann.
I haven't been at it that long.
No, but it's a good story, actually. It's a good story.
Gandalf the Hartness here.
So I was working in the internet poker industry, and I had worked for various poker websites for about 4 or 5 years and written somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 articles for various websites. And I got in an argument with my editor. She felt like I had a deadline, and I felt like nobody had ever told me that, so she shouldn't be yelling at me about a deadline. Well, she won that argument, and I didn't have a job anymore working for the internet poker industry. So I decided out of spite that I would write the great American novel. Well, I accomplished 2/3 of that. I am indeed an American, and I did write a novel. Its greatness is yet to be determined. But that novel was The Chosen, and I wrote it, and then I put it in a drawer for a year. And I spent that year learning how to get anything published anywhere. So I wrote poetry because they're quicker. And over the course of the next year, I had 11 different poems accepted for publication from various online and print literary journals. And I thought that, okay, so I kind of get a sense of what's going on. I should be able to get this novel published, no problem. So I started sending out queries to agents. And after about the 5th or 6th one, and a month had gone by and I had gotten no responses, I was like, well, this is taking too long. This is obviously ridiculous. I'll just self-publish the thing. By the way, that's not taking too long. That's me being in a damn hurry. And I was ridiculous. But I did self-publish the book, and in the first month it was on sale, I sold 9 copies. And in the second month it was on sale, I sold 27 copies. In the third month, I think I sold like 15. But then 10 of the 30 people who had bought the book had told me they liked it. So it's like, all right, I'll write more stuff. And I started writing the Black Knight Chronicles, which was a light urban fantasy series. And I self-published the first one of those, and people started buying it. Because despite all advice to the contrary, there were still people who wanted to buy vampire books. So I started with the Black Knight Chronicles, and I found out something very interesting. If you are one of roughly 4 people in the world writing urban fantasy novels with snarky male protagonists, and it's been a solid year since Jim Butcher has released a book, and about 8 months since Simon Green has released a book, then you and Kevin Hearn are the only people with new releases.
Yeah, but what year was this? What year was this?
I think it was 2010. Whatever year the first Iron Druid books came out, I think it was 2010. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Kevin Hearn released the first 3 Iron Druid books, and over that same summer, I released the 3rd Black Knight Chronicles book. So whenever anybody went to Jim Butcher's Amazon page looking for the new Dresden Files book, well, they'd read all of Jim's books. So they looked down at the people who bought this also bought, and then they went and bought Kevin's book. And then they bought his 2nd book and his 3rd book, and then they were done with him. So I was the 4th thing on the also bought list. So by the time things trickled down, I still sold a hell of a lot of books that summer. And then I sold that series to Bellbridge Books out of Memphis and started writing the Bubba the Monster Hunter stories to go along with that. I self-published and published with Bellbridge through 2015. And in 2016, we launched Falstaff Books. And I think it was about 2015 when I started the Quincy Harker series as well. And since 2016, I've split time between writing and publishing, and we have produced somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 titles in those years, and we've got about that many under contract, all for publication, and we've produced some really good work. So it's been an interesting shift of focus, because I'm not just promoting my stuff anymore. And I occasionally think back to how easy life was when I only had to promote the stuff I wrote, and I didn't have to write back cover copy for 40 or 50 titles a year. But it's been incredibly rewarding.
Did you see that? Did you see my tear? Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is us feeling sorry for you, taking over the world.
Yeah, well, yeah. JD feels particularly not sorry because I made her write her own back cover copy. So it's your fault. You're funny.
I think Teresa wrote most of it.
Yeah, I didn't care. I knew I would.
Whoever wrote it.
If it makes you feel better, JD, I always write my own.
So that's the very abbreviated version of my story. And I don't know, since 2010, I've published 25 novel-length works. And this year, 10 years into my career, I have gotten my first SIFWA qualifying publications. I have been a SIFWA member for about 4 or 5 years, but my first SIFWA qualifying short fiction sales are 2 anthologies that released this year.
I think you're also leaving out that you are a recipient of the Manly Wade Wellman Award as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, the first Quincy Harker book won the Manly Wade Wellman Award from the North Carolina Speculative Fiction Foundation, and the 4th Black Knight Chronicles book won the Electronic Publishing Industry Coalition Award for Best Horror Novel. I did forget about those. Oh, and I was nominated for a Pushcart Prize that year. I submitted poetry to a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
But yeah, I started this podcast with a bunch of other idiots called Authors and Dragons, where we play D&D every 2 weeks and swear copiously. We may be the worst adventuring party in the history of Dungeons and Dragons.
Are we going to get another and one more thing?
Yeah. So
I dropped my one more thing earlier this week, so I have no sympathy.
All right.
And I do all the layout for every title we publish. So
he's really, really, really talented and a terrific guy to boot. So he just, he just laughs it off, but he's really a great person.
Exactly.
You do what you can.
All right.
He's great and good.
Now we're going to go to you, Allie, to follow John.
Mine is short. I am mostly self-pubbed. I mean, I have 12 titles out now. I started in 2014 with my first book of short stories called Object Stories of Things. And then I wrote my first novel-length work called Chains of Fate, which came out in 2015, which has since turned into a 3-book series because my mother is a pusher. And I write mostly in epic fantasy, horror, and YA. Emphasis on the YA. I spend a lot of time in the heads of teenagers. I don't know why. I hated being a teenager. But there you go. And getting to work with Falstaff books has actually been really funny because I remember it became a question of finding something for me to write. And then I don't really remember other than it was James Gates on Twitter saying tie-in fiction for Broken Cities. And I sent her an email and said, yes, me, will do. And she sent me back an email asking me to pitch her something. So in about 10 minutes of me getting that email, I sat down, thought about it, and was like, what have I got in the top of my head that I can get out quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Because
I love that stuff, by the way. I think that's always the coolest stuff,
And
where
then
it's
Jim
like you have
emailed
to
me.
grab the idea.
And then
Jim
I turned
emailed me and said, so who is this Alledria Hurt? And I was like, yeah, just sign her. She's awesome.
Yeah. So I was like, so then I got into that situation, and then it turned into a 2-year journey where it kind of went to the back burner for a while, and then it moved to the front, and then it got dropped in Aaron's lap. And then it went on, and I got like 3 rounds of edits in 6 months, and it was like, wow, this is going a lot faster than I thought it was. And then suddenly they said, okay, we're getting ready to put this out. It's coming out in June. And I said, what? And then I got the cover for it. And now I have the cover for it, and it's so purple. It's pretty.
It's very purple. It's like as purple as my hair was.
It's very purple. It makes me so happy.
And will probably return to be once we're able to convention again.
Yeah, probably.
Yay, Alledria.
All right. Thank you. Leann.
Let's see. Well, I wanted to write from forever ago, in middle school. But I had this bright idea. I was going to go to college and major in abnormal psychology and write crime novels. And then I did 2 years of that. And then I switched to biology and decided to become a doctor, as you do. And then with the writing, I remembered that I have this love of sci-fi and fantasy. And so first I should probably explain that medical school is you go to class from like 8 to 5, and then you come home and like maybe eat, and then you study till like it's time to pass out, and then you get up and do it again, and then on the weekends you do the same thing. So I started medical school, and then I get to Christmas break, and I have like 3 weeks where I'm like, I have nothing to do. I have no idea what to do with myself. So after binge watching Grey's Anatomy in a day, I plotted out, and I wrote the first chapter of my young adult urban fantasy that I named the main character after my grandma, because she was one of those extraordinary women who never had anything bad to say about anybody, was born in 1914, but like had a college degree and ran her husband's business and was a working mom with 4 kids and still gardened. And so she was amazing. So I started that horrible, I hated that first chapter. I think I rewrote the chapter of that first chapter of that book like 3 million times. And then I had to go back to school, and then I wrote another chapter over spring break, and then I went back to school, and then I wrote like half of the novel over the summer, and then I went back to school, and then I started 3rd year, and then I got pregnant, and then I was graduated and in residency, and fast forward, and now it's been like 8 years since I started the thing, and I'm in my 2nd year of residency, where during that you work 80 hours a week. And I needed a break from reality. So I started in like April, and by June I finished the first novel. I rewrote the whole thing. Then I wrote the second one after I finished, when I was building my practice and was bored because I didn't have a lot of people to see. And then I got to meet Faith Hunter, I hope you know her, but she's an awesome writer. She's a New York Times bestseller. She writes the Jane Yellow Rock novels, and she took me under her wing, and she actually introduced me to Melissa MacArthur, who took a look at my first book and really mentored me and taught me how to write. I remember asking her like, so can I actually have talent, and can I write, or am I trying to paint a portrait and it's just a stick figure with some glitter? And she laughed and she said, no, you have talent. You just now need to learn the technique. But she's like, the storytelling and the character and the voice, she's like, I can't teach you when you have that. So she worked with me in between me and her. I self-published that first book and turned it into a trilogy and a short story. And then in the middle of that, I wrote The Dream Thief, and I pitched it to Falstaff at a dinner, not at a bar. And actually, John was talking to, not me. So I pitched it to Wes, and he's like, that sounds interesting. Send it to me. And then I got a rejection letter, and I was very disheartened, but I was like, well, okay. And fast forward about 5 months, and I ran into him at Com Carolinas, and he said, have you sold that yet? And I was like, oh, no, I just sort of put it in the back and started writing something else. And he said, well, send it to me again. And he later told me that of all the things that came through in the slush file, mine was the only one that stayed in his mind, and he still wanted to know what was going to happen. So I sent it back to him and then talked to John, and he said, all right, sounds good. And here we are. I have a 4-book deal, and book 2 is going to come out, and book 3 is with Erin, and she is grinding it up into little pieces as we speak.
So anyone that thinks they don't have time to write,
Right.
you were working 80 hours, boy, and going through medical school and everything else.
And I have 3 kids. And 3
As
dogs.
you do. All right, JD.
I'll give you the shorter version, but I had always been writing, and I was a total nerd as a kid, and all I did was read, So I had always been writing, and I'd written all through elementary school. I literally started writing when I was my first short story was when I was 7. And I wrote, and then I went to this I went to graduate school, and all my writing there was very academic and passive voice, and as many words as you could take to describe something, that's how you used. And anything I knew about creative writing went sort of into this back closet and stayed there. And then I got married, and I had 3 kids, like Leann, and that's just sort of what I was doing. And I was working full time. I had a full-time job in corporate communications, and so unlike Leann, I was not able to write at that time. I was raising children and working full-time and doing all this stuff. And I always kept trying to write, but it wasn't happening. I'd start, and then I'd stop, and I'd start, and I'd stop, and it just never happened. And then my oldest child was applying for college. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and he was applying for college. And I literally had, true meaning of the word, I had an epiphany, which was, this were the words, they're going to leave. And that epiphany was, my kids are starting to leave the nest, and I need something to do. And so, from there, I decided I wanted to start writing, and I actually met Jay Ricard first. And I started writing. I went to Dragon Con. I got inspired to start writing, and it took a bit to obviously get going, and I got a lot of help from some friends, and I started a blog, which I still do, slipperywords.com, and I used that as a way to interact with the writing community even when I wasn't able to start publishing myself because I had so much to learn. And I started doing author interviews and all sorts of stuff, so please visit that, slipperywords.com. And eventually I had something I really thought was pretty good. And John and I have talked about this, where it was a Faith Hunter book that I was reading at the time, coincidentally. And Faith has this character where it's a Jane Yartler Rock book where the mansion that he lives in is constantly getting blown up and has fires, and all these things are happening all the time. And I suddenly thought, what do the neighbors think? How can you live there? How do you want to live a mile away? I don't. So it spurred this idea for a character. Has nothing to do with Faith's book, but it just brought up this idea, what do the neighbors think? And it spurred this idea for a character, and that started the Soul Wars, which I eventually showed to Jay, and who showed to John, and that became my first series for Falstaff. So eventually, that's what led to me getting published by Falstaff. So that was my first novella series, and the 4 novellas together create a book. So that's what happened.
Great.
So,
Now let's.
before you guys go on, I'm glad that you talked after me, and I kind of wish you would have talked before me, because this has revealed a little of my weakness. I suck at names, so I meant that I talked to Jay and pitched it to Jay, and I said his name wrong. So forget. Anyway, it was Jay who I talked to. I'm sorry, Jay. I'm bad with names. It's not just you; it's everybody. They live.
Oh, good, because I was really trying to.
I was trying to figure out who Wes was.
Yes, no, I was
reading for me that,
Wes, and there's 3 letters, and Wes was at the dinner.
and they're about the same height.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
It
Really
was
about
Jay.
the same hair color. No, it's.
But it was Jay. It was Jay. And yeah, Jay was really helpful. I talked to him about it, and I showed him the stuff, and then he showed it to John. And so that's how the Soul Wars happened. That was the first book. And then just to add to it, so the Monster Hunter mom, though, was very different. I do want to just say about this, because Monster Hunter mom ties in with John's Bubba. My Monster Hunter mom, Jess Friedman, is a Monster Hunter. She lives in John's Bubba universe. And Bubba is, if you read them, if you know, he's Bubba, he's a big guy toting around a big desert eagle, and, he's exactly who he is. He's well named. And I said to John, I've got this idea for a Monster Hunter, but she's going to be a little different. And he was like, okay. So I created a Monster Hunter who's Jewish and has 3 kids and lives in the Cleveland suburbs, and she doesn't use any guns at all. She only uses like household items and things you can find in the back of a Toyota Sienna minivan. And so she's like a really different Monster Hunter, and so we have a lot of fun with her because she's like the antithesis of Bubba. So I said, I'm going to send you a different Monster Hunter, and he said, when he read the first one, he was like, okay, this is going to be fun to do.
Yeah, this will be just fine.
Very fun with him.
And we've got several other authors who write various Monster Hunters around the U.S., but none of them are quite as far afield of the root of Bubba as Jess. So she has her own territory. Nobody else has to explain to their rabbi why they're hunting monsters for the Catholic Church.
Correct.
All right, so let's get back to the new books, and we'll start with you, John. Tell us something about swamp music. Could be, where did it come from? What was the seed for either the book or the series? That may not be a good one, or maybe the great story by the way.
It's probably a pretty good one. So let's think about something that was very popular in media a couple of months ago. We're shooting this in June of 2020, so long about March, April of 2020, there was a cultural phenomenon taking place in the United States, and it was called Tiger King. And there is some very definite Tiger King influences in swamp music, to the tune of Clyde the Gator King. And Clyde's a showman. Clyde comes onto the stage with 1 foot on the back of 2 giant alligators like they're surfboards. So yeah, I took some pieces, some inspiration from some of the things that have happened in the Authors and Dragons campaign. That's where the cloacas come from. and some of the ridiculousness of Tiger King. And then, because it felt wrong to me that most of Tiger King did not take place in Florida. That should have been a Florida thing. So I made it be a Florida gator, gator thing. And this is the second novella in this season of Bubba, and this season of Bubba actually finally gives my fans and readers something they've been asking for several years, which is the Bubba the Monster Hunter Quincy Harker crossover. So starting with Born to be Wild, which was the first novella in season 5, we start dropping little feelers. Then with Inflection Point, which was Harker 6, we had some more things that started to cross over. Now we advance that plot a little more in Swamp Music, and in the Harker book that I'm doing now, we'll push that narrative even further forward. And in the last 2 novellas of this season of Bubba, in at least one of them, they will be fighting both alongside each other and each other. Because if there are 2 good guys that would naturally dislike each other more than Bubba and Quincy Harker, well, hard pressed to find them, because they're not going to like each other.
All right. Allie, how about you?
One thing about A Doll's Life, I am terrified of marionettes. That is 100% why I have human-sized dolls in this story, is because I am absolutely bloody terrified of marionettes.
You really should have
Isn't that
revealed
John
that, because I'm
Malkovich?
going to have a lot of fun with you.
Isn't that a thing in that movie, Being John Malkovich? Aren't there human-sized marionettes in that? Because that's super creepy.
Yeah, I am so afraid of marionettes that during the first Devil May Cry movie, there is a section right at the beginning where you get a cut scene where the marionettes come out of the ground. I noped out of that so hard I threw the controller across the room. It's like, no, we are not doing this. Not at all. Not even a little bit. It's like, and so I decided I would pick out the thing that scares me and be like, okay, if it scares the devil out of me, let's see what it does to other people. It's like I will tell people I'm not fair. I don't do fair, because I don't believe that fair works for everybody. Because no matter what seems to happen, somebody's always going, it's not fair. So I just don't strive for fair. And then, so when you want to pull what scares me, okay, if it scares me, maybe it scares you. And I watched my brother play that game all the way through. He has no problem with it whatsoever. And it's like, but me? No, I can't watch it. I can't even sit through it. But that's where that's where the dolls come from in this book.
All right. Leann, how about you? An idea or seed for either the story or the series?
So my idea for the Dream Thief came back from, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, but like, if you could go back in time and kill a child Hitler, would you do it to prevent the Holocaust? And so I started thinking about, how things, evolve with people. And there's a quote by J.R. Tolkien. It's, a single dream is more powerful than 1,000 realities. So I thought, what if a lot of the ideas that humanity gets, the seed of it starts from a dream, and it would cause a ripple effect. So what if you didn't have to go back and actually kill Hitler, but just change, one of his dreams that would lead him on this path to becoming who he became? And so from that, the Dream Thieves were born, and so they have this ability to do that. So the interesting thing is when they do steal a dream, they get to see the future as it would have happened. And then they also get to see the new reality. And so they get a little confused because, they have all these realities and timelines in their head that didn't happen. So my main character actually has a antique bookstore, and he's very into history because he has to go back and read what actually happened because he doesn't really remember everything.
Interesting. All right, JD.
The Zombie Cosmetologist was born because I had this original idea about a zombie investigator who got paid in body parts, and they had to be fresh, because he had a no murder rule. Like he was going to be a zombie investigator for the paranormal community, but he had a no murder rule. So I had this like scene in my head that would happen over and over again where, all of these paranormal kind of creatures would be waiting around, like following like the medical examiner so they could like pounce and try to get the body parts. And it would be funny. But then I realized there's a couple zombie investigator type like books out there, especially one, Kevin J. Anderson has done it. And I thought, well, I can't do that. And one of the things about the Monster Hunter Mom books that I think people like is it has a little bit of me in it, like a little bit of like I'm, mom with 3 kids, and there's a little bit of me in it. So I thought, well, what do I know a lot about that I could sort of put in it? And, I like makeup and skincare and stuff like that. And so I was driving to work, and I said, Zombie Cosmetologist. And I just burst out laughing, like by myself in the car. And I thought, that's hilarious. Like, that's just funny. And another writer friend, Jason, John was telling us about, has this rule that if you do it 3 times and it still makes you laugh, like it stays in. So Zombie Cosmetologist made me laugh like 10 times. So it stayed. And then I was like, well, now I need to find a story to go with Zombie Cosmetologist. And that basically I was like, well, of course, clearly he's a cosmetologist because he has scars and he had to go into makeup and skincare and special effects makeup to learn how to hide his own scars so he could pass as human. And that's where it came from.
All right, great.
Let's get the name too. Let's make sure that we focus, that we bring some
his
attention
name.
to the name.
So for whatever reason, just because, I'm a country music fan, I decided to name him Waylon Jenkins. And so in every book, there is a reference to or the actual title of a Waylon Jennings song. So I don't point it out. I don't say what it is. So you're either going to get it or you're not. And it's just in there. And you got to look for it. And in fact, in the third one, there's actually 2 references. So good luck.
Something to look forward to. All right,
yeah, you gotta find him.
Jason.
So a lot of times I get the question of what's your inspiration, and I usually tell people alcohol and heavy metal music. In the case of Wolfbane, so over the years I've watched werewolves in media go from being these really terrifying biped, humanoid-looking 8-foot tall creatures to Marmaduke. And so I decided, okay, if I'm going to write this werewolf story, I don't want Clifford the big red dog. I want this scary ass gigantic werewolf. Any of you video gamers out there, think Saberwolf from Killer Instinct. And my idea was, what if he was the son of the Wolfman? He has to deal with his father's murderous past, and he investigates real world crime. So we get James Coldstone, and yes, there is an ice cream joke in the new book. Not in the new one coming out, the one I'm writing. And he is partnered with his best friend Philip, who is a detective with the Rock Hill Police Department. And what initially looks like some really grisly murders turns into a human trafficking ring. And human trafficking scares shit out of me. I'm not gonna lie, especially with me having a daughter. So that was a lot of research that I frankly did not want to do, but had to. So there had to be some levity in it. So James is well spoken to the point where a lot of times he'll read like he's British. But it has to do with his father spending so much time in Wales and coming back, back and forth as a kid. Versus, but he still tends to be really snarky, versus Philip is just 100% snark. So I also wanted to keep it to my real world locations, like here in Rock Hill. Book 2 is in Charleston, and then book 3 is in Jacksonville. Where the challenge was I've never been to Jacksonville, Florida. Have no intention of going because things are going on. So thank God for Google Maps and satellites and Google Earth.
I have been to Jacksonville. You're good, babe. You're
awesome.
good.
But at the same time, with everything being so fantastic, and I'm reading through the Dresden Files books right now, and even with those, the crimes tend to be on the more supernatural side. I'm trying to keep the crimes, okay, so what would the BAU go after, or Sean and Gus from Psych go after, and how can I make this have kind of a supernatural backing to it? So yes, it's human trafficking. Yes, I go into the procedural stuff and how the police approach that, and how we know traffickers work at the moment, but there's still a supernatural element to it, and that's where James comes in. So there has to be snark, because let's be real, I'm having to look at research on human trafficking. That is not a pleasant subject. So the next season deals with sleep paralysis and embezzlement. That's a lot neater to look at than what I had to look at for season 1.
All right, that kind of leads into the next question, which is tell us a little bit about your writing routine, and we'll start with you, Allie.
Ooh, I was lucky I wrote today. I was very happy. It's been, since this whole current world situation started, my writing routine has gone out the window. So I wrote for the first 3 weeks. I wrote a book in the first 3 weeks. And then after that, I started on another project, and I still haven't finished it 2 months later. So that should tell you exactly how fast I'm working on this. But my general routine is that I will do anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 words a day, usually 6, maybe 7 days a week, depending. And I'm almost completely a discovery writer, which is kind of difficult given the fact that I like to write epic fantasy, and that means that if I write the entire 3-book series, I've got plot holes big enough to drive a Mack truck through. So I need to go back and read and reread everything that I've written and figure out how to get it so that it actually all jives and makes sense. And it's like, oh, yeah, I have an entire 3-book epic fantasy series right now that I'm working on editing that is I don't know why I did this to myself, but but that is my writing routine. My writing routine is I work 6-7 days a week. I try to do 1,000 to 2,000 words a day. It doesn't. I do morning, afternoon, evening, depending on what my schedule looks like, depending on whether or not I'm working, depending on whether or not I have the spoons to deal with it. You know. C'est la vie.
Great. Leann, a little about yours with your fun schedule.
Well, kind of the same thing in light of current events. My writing schedule is fallen by the wayside, but typically what I will do is I write during my lunch break at work, and then each of my kids is very active in sports, so about every evening after work I am dropping one off or picking one up, so there's lots of sitting there waiting as I use that time to write, and then some on the weekends after all their games. So the fact that they've cut our hours down and nobody's doing sports and nobody can go anywhere, I've become my daughter's best friend. So I literally get home from work and she's like tapping at the window and so it's been a little difficult, but that's my typical writing style. But I have during this time written about 20,000 words on a novella and did a proofread of The Dream Awakened, which is coming out on Thursday. And I did a developmental edit of the third book in the Hands of Time series. So not totally useless.
Right, JD.
Well, my writing routine is in flux, just again, because of the changes in the world. I had a full-time job that I'd been at for 13 years, and then I lost it. And I lost it like fast. Like it was Thursday, and they said, your last day is tomorrow. And I went, oh, okay. So I literally became a full-time author in like a day. So I've been working on developing a new process. I think because of how I always wrote after work, though, I find myself starting to really write at 4. like I have this whole day, and yet I can't start. I don't write until 4 p.m. And I think it's just because it's like when my brain is used to clicking on and starting to write. But I use the earlier part of the day to proofread and edit, do marketing stuff. So I'm working on sort of setting up a new process. And one thing I would say is I do not write every day. I don't. And I think that, a lot of people say you have to write every day and you have to sit down, button chair, hand on keyboard. And you do have to write. Obviously, you're not going to get anywhere, but you don't have to write every day. And that's a fallacy. You need to find a system that works for you. I can't write every day because I have tremendous tendonitis in my right wrist. And I have to take days off and ice my wrist and not do anything with it. So, I think people need to calm down on that little piece of advice and just find the time to sit down as many days a week as you can and pop out some words. And one of the best things that I can say that I do is I break it down into chunks. So if some days, the thought of writing 1,000 words just seems absolutely absurd. Like there's just no way I'm going to reach 1,000 words. Forget it. So I'll say I'm going to reach 500 words. And then maybe I get on a roll and I reach 1,000 words or 1,500 words. And then some days I have to settle for 200. And you know what? That's okay. And some days I might have to settle for 50. But it's just about breaking it down into whatever small parts you have to. And it's better to get 50 words or 100 words or 500 words than no words. That's what I think.
Great. Jason. Muted again.
I mute with my microphone and not on Zoom because from the editing aspect, I've had to deal with that before. So I got in the habit of keeping writing with my day job schedule. So when I was in construction, it was up at 3 in the morning. I went to bed at 8, so I wasn't doing, like no sleep, and would eat breakfast, show up at the job site hour and a half early, and write till it was time to go in. Then when picked up the teaching gig and write in my office, for the first hour before I start, um, you know, class or my planning period with everything going on, we had to do office hours. So it was really kind of easy for me to keep a routine. And now that I'm on summer break, 7 days a week, I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I just wake up, sometimes 6, but my alarm goes off at 7. I usually go to bed about 10 or 11 o'clock. I'm like wearing John out.
A mere concept. Look, I'm old, so I get up that early, but it's to pee, and then I go back to bed.
Oh, dude, when I'm at con, I'm at like 7:30 in the morning. I am up.
Yes, he is, and he's not quiet.
No, I'm not. So I will do my video games movie in the morning, and then at 11 o'clock, I'll start writing. I crank out 2,000 to 3,500 words a day. I write 5 days a week. I do not write on weekends at all, period, dot, end of story, not happening. Reason being is, for me, I have weekends off from my day job. So it's easier for me to just say I have weekends off, period, dot, and it helps me stay in my routine. I'm not saying that's going to work for everybody, but that's what works for me. Have I had days where I'm doing good to get out 100 words? Yes. But with me having that clockwork routine, I'm able to output what I output.
All right, great. John.
So it's 2020, so the world is on fire, and nobody's making their word counts. I am part of that nobody. This year, I'm doing good to do 2,000 words a day, 5 days a week. So if I can get 10,000 words a week, it's a killer week. The first couple of months of quarantine, I think I did 20,000 words a month, maybe. Now that I've settled into just accepting that the world's on fire, I am writing more. I don't follow a set schedule. Sometimes in a perfect world, I would write until noon or 1, take lunch, and then be publisher in the afternoon. But realistically, I get up and answer emails, and then I respond to things that need to be done based off of those emails. Then I get sucked into some social media whirlpool. For example, when we're done tonight, I still owe 1,000 words. So I've gotten half of today's chapter written. I need to write the rest of today's chapter this evening after we adjourn. So I am fortunate that I have the flexibility to do that, but because I do see all of the numbers, I see where my sales go and how long I can go between releases without it negatively affecting my ability to eat. And as is fairly obvious, I'm fond of eating. So I know I need to make something. I need to have a release at least once every 3 months to continue my revenue the way I like to continue it. And the last few years, it's been more regular than that. And usually I'm putting out 2 to 3 novels a year and 4 to 6 novellas a year. So I'm dropping something about every couple of months. But we'll see. I took a long break from Bubba after season 4. When I get done with season 5, I'll probably take another year break. I've got some other things that I want to explore. I've got a thriller that I really want to write that's not supernatural at all that I want to play with. I've got some high fantasy things I want to play with, but I can't work those in with the way my creative output is right now and the things I have to produce to continue to feed the machine. One thing that JD said that I thought was really important is manageable chunks. I shoot for a chapter a day, which is, for me, is 2,000 to 2,500 words. But I'm diagnosed and medicated for ADHD. So sitting down and writing for the 90 minutes that it takes me to jam out 2,000 to 2,500 words, that ain't gonna happen. I don't have the focus. So usually I'll do 500 words at a throw and then go away and do something else, or I'll pivot and do layout on a book, or I'll schedule social media for the week. Then I come back and do another 500 words, and then I'll go do something else, and I'll edit something, and then I'll come back. So that is one of the ways that I deal with, one, my own personal medical issues, and 2, needing to make that output. And I also tend to write 5 days a week, but it's not always the same 5 days. One day last week, I had a lot of errands to run and a lot of video conferences to do and record. So I didn't write that day, so I made it up on Saturday. I shoot for 5 chapters a week.
And just to kind of piggyback on that, I'm glad you brought that up, because it goes back to the point that I was making earlier about scheduling. So where John will lose a day and be able to make it up later, because I'm also diagnosed and medicated for ADHD. The difference is that as long as I have that set time, like if I say my time is 11 to 1, I can sit there and bang out 2,000, 3,500 words. But then once that 1 o'clock hits, as soon as my eyes see 1 o'clock, I could be in the middle of a scene and my brain is just going to start going haywire. If I lose a day, like when Con Carolinas was going on, I didn't write for 2 weeks. Just with all the stuff we were setting up, all the things that had to be done. And I stick to that Saturday and Sunday, I'm not writing. Because yes, it would be more productive to make up those days, but I know that if I do that, if I write on a Saturday, my stupid brain is going to throw me off for the rest of the week. So if I lose Monday, I lose Monday. So point being is different things work for different people, but you can still find a lot of similarities in how everyone does things.
And JD's right that the idea of you have to write every single day is probably more harmful than it is helpful.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
we as writers carry so much guilt and self-rejection and self-flagellation already. We don't need that from other people. And I have been as guilty as anyone of saying, you have to write every day. And it's a load of crap. You do need to write frequently, and you need to write relatively consistently. But you also have to spend time with your family, hobbies, pets, whatever.
Self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care. I mean, it has to be all worked in. And there are times when I have a scene in my head and I could write 4,000 words. Really, like 3,500, 4,000 words, whatever. I'm on a roll. I know what I'm doing. And then, it's another day I can't write anything, whatever. I've learned to accept that that's the way my brain is. And oftentimes when that happens, it's because something in the back of my brain is stewing. And I've learned to understand that that is what is happening right now. And I need to just let that process go. And I have become much more of an outliner. I used to be, I like Alledria says, a discovery writer. Very nice.
It's a nice
Otherwise known as
pantser.
Yes, otherwise known as a pantser.
Much better.
Right. I was a committed pantser for a very long time. And I'm getting into a process where I actually have to share outlines with other people. And when they want to see the outline, you have to have one. I don't know. So, you have to have an outline. And so.
For the record, you don't have to stick to it.
You don't have to stick to it, but you need to have some basic idea and be able to show other people this is what I'm planning.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It really helps you write that book.
It also helps you write faster, I find.
It helps you write
Yes,
faster.
it
So
does.
So I'm spending a lot more time at the outset outlining, and that helps as well. So
if you lose Monday, there's a Tuesday.
there's a Tuesday.
I
right.
lost 2 weeks, and you know what? The last day of ConTinual was May 31st, which was a Sunday. Guess what I did on Monday? Went back to writing. So, this idea of you have to write every day, just throw that out the window, because you're going to end up overstressing yourself, and then you're not going to want to do it because you're going to sit down and you can't focus because you're too stressed out to write anything.
And I do write on a computer, like directly into the computer, but some of the biggest names we have write longhand first.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin J. Anderson writes completely by talking into a dictaphone and then having someone,
No.
it's true, he does though.
Oh, I believe it.
And then having someone type that out for him completely. He takes a walk, he writes one chapter, he takes the walk back and he writes another chapter.
Pat Conroy wrote everything on legal pads, longhand and pencil.
Daniel Silva writes everything in pencil on legal pads, lying on his stomach. I actually got to see him talk. He writes everything laying down and he writes this way.
Maurice Broaddus also writes everything longhand before he transcribes it. I'm like you, I write directly into the computer.
Yeah, it's the process, which is why I have tendinitis.
AJ Hartley also writes directly in the computer, but he does it standing up. If you go into his office, right there in the doorway, if you look to your left, there's a little standing desk that he puts his laptop on, and he's standing up.
I have a standing desk too. I have one that goes up and down so I can switch. But now you know why he's so skinny, because he stands tall.
I was about to say that exact same thing. I was like, oh, that guy's so skinny. Because, the man can cook, so that's not the reason.
He had me come over. He had some issues going on at the electrical, and I'm an electrician by trade. And so I went and was looking at an outlet in his living room, and the house smelled absolutely amazing. And I'm like, what is that? He goes, I'm cooking a roast. I said, is that beer I smell? He goes, you don't cook a roast in beer?
He's very British.
Oh man. Oh God. I'm like, and I do cook my roast in beer, but even like my amazing roast does not smell that amazing. It was awesome.
All right, so what we're hearing is that everyone has their own method. That I do like the fact you're saying you don't have to write every day, don't beat yourself up, especially, all of us at some point or another, I'm sure, have had the imposter syndrome or suffer from it currently.
Never.
Yeah. And
But
you
I-
know,
Have I told you the story of my very first book signing at LibertyCon?
no, I have not heard this.
If you want to have imposter syndrome induced, here's what you do. You go to a convention for the first time,
Yeah.
5.5, 6 hours away from home, where you know practically no one that's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And the convention gives you an hour of signing time each day. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you have an hour in the dealer room to sign books. Now, you know, as the newbie self-published author with 3 books to your name, that probably no one's going to come up with one of your books already, but maybe they'll come talk to you and buy a book. Well, if you walk in and the row starts with Tim Zahn, and next to Tim is Eric Flint, and next to Eric is Brandon Sanderson, and next to Brandon is a placard with your name on it,
That's funny.
beside Dr. Jerry Parnell, who is sitting next to Larry Niven. You might think for a moment that you do not belong at that table.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
you-
had something very similar, but not quite as many people. But I got seated. I had my 3 little novellas, and David Bico was just, his Isolvale series was just coming out, and it was hitting all the, like, it was getting all the awards and it was doing really well. And next to him was Guy Gavriel Kay, and me,
who David idolizes.
who's David idolized. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, this is ridiculous.
That
Yeah.
sounds like my first panel at Con Carolinas. My first panel at Con Carolinas is John and AJ, and it's Shakespeare. And I'm sitting there going,
That was a really good panel, though.
it was a fantastic panel, but it was just like, who am I to be sitting at this table with these people? Who am
And
I?
Emily Leverett, who's a PhD medievalist, she was on that too.
Yeah, I was just like, I was sitting here with I was sitting there going, I don't belong. Why am I here? Oh my God, these people. And then I realized that I knew John from magicalwords.net, and I was like, this is not fair.
Yeah. I was saying the same thing, and I was the moderator for that panel. So
See,
My
this,
first panel was the only guest that showed up and the only attendant as well. So I got to sit there. And nobody was in the room. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to go back to out there.
yeah.
I had a signing that no one came to.
Oh,
I mean, I do the imposter syndrome thing, and that's kind of actually my pet subject. I run the panel for it at Con Carolinas on the film track every year, and it's always kind of been there, but it never really hit me like it did at MarsCon, where I had to do a panel on what would you do to survive the zombie apocalypse, and one of the other 2 panelists besides me was Shannon McGuire, and I'm moderating. I don't know the other person. I don't know Shannon, but I've heard stories, and Shannon's a character.
Shannon's great.
And John gave me some excellent advice. He said, just find that one question, ask it, and if it's the right question, all you have to do is just sit back and watch. And I was picking at it, and Sean didn't want to be on the panel, so she was not really taking it seriously. And then I guess I hit that one question, and she looks at me and she goes, "Are you kidding me? Is that the question you're asking? Oh, this is what you want?" And I just kicked back and watched. Me and the other panelists just sat back, and this woman managed to scare the hell out of a room of 50 people. Like you could hear a pin drop. And I just let her go. Made me feel better, but when I first walked in the room And even before then, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm done.
You know, I thought that I had gotten over having imposter syndrome. And then I show up to Dragon Con and I'm on a panel with Kim Harrison and Mercedes Lackey. And I'm like, hi. And I'm like, between the two of you, I've literally read probably 30 of your books. It's like,
I love Kim.
yeah.
I remember
Well,
being
Kim's
in
great.
her house as a teenager in the writing group listening to her original series.
Yeah, and Mercedes Lackey is fantastic. She flipped off the audience, which was great.
Yes!
All right. I do want to thank everyone for coming. Let's quickly go around the room and tell people where they can find you on your socials. We'll start with Leann.
You can go to my website. It's very original. It's leannmrettell.com. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter and a little bit, and Instagram.
All right, great. JD?
Sure. You can find me. I have an author page on Facebook under J.D.Blackrose. I have a Twitter under J.D.Blackrose. Woo. And my blog site is slipperywords.com.
All right, and Jason?
You can find me at the highly imaginatively titled jasonhgilbert.com. I promise I'll update the website eventually. You can find me on Facebook, usually bitching about something. I'm rarely on Twitter because it's a wretched hive of scum and villainy. And
That's so my joke.
And you can buy my stuff direct from Falstaff Books. You can hit me up on Amazon.
Great. John?
If you want to know about my books or all of these folks' books, you can go to falstaffbooks.com and you can sign up for our newsletter where you'll get advance notice of releases and special deals, including our Falstaff Pride bundle that is coming out this weekend. If you want just my author news and book news and professional level connection, you can join my Facebook group, which is John G. Hartness Books. If you're interested in my profanity-laced tweets about politics and current events, I am at John Hartness on Twitter, and there will be F-bombs.
All right, thank you. And finally, Allie?
You can find me at alledriahurt.com. Pretty much if you can spell my first name, I am the first 5 pages of Google.
All right, perfect. All right. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank all of our guests. And until next week, bye, guys.
Bye.